welcome to Fresh Off the Boat. We're on season 3, and I'm so happy to be back with Sanchit. Sanchit has been a student I've known since he was in high school, and he's had a pretty interesting journey in the UK, studying at King's, studying computer science, and then working as a technology consultant at EY, then doing a master's in design, and then also doing a very interesting summer program at Berlin. So we'll capture his journey. But very often, students and families are concerned about destinations. The UK has seen a tremendous increase in number of applicants from India. There's always this thing of understanding return on investment, which parents keep talking about. I'm sure kids are not that keen to figure that out, but of course, at the end, they do want to know what made it worth it, or perhaps what they could have done better during their college years to not only earn experiences, but also save money and sort of figure out their career trajectories. So the first question to you, Sanchit, and please introduce yourself first and then the question. So go ahead, introduce yourself and we'll take it from there.
So I'm Sanchit. I'm a product and service designer currently working for a health and biotechnology startup. I started my journey as a computer scientist, slowly changed streams over the years, started working as a designer. I'm also currently working as an artist with the Serpentine Gallery and the V&A. So quite a different few channels from what I started my journey as. And yeah, that's me.
Looking at your journey, it seems that it's true that you just cannot predict what life has in store for you. And if you're open to experiences, and if you're open to seeking mentorship, and there's a lot of serendipity in play when it comes to really landing the right sort of job or right experience or right education. Tell us in brief, what exactly you think was your mindset when you finished your computer science degree at King's, and what were you thinking when you applied for various jobs? How easy or difficult was it to do that?
So I had my experience applying to different jobs a lot earlier than most of the students that were around me. I'd opted to go for a year in placement with my degree rather than just look for jobs after I'd graduated. So while I was searching for a placement, I kind of realized that it is a bit difficult to find a job. And the unfortunate reality is that when you have a visa that has to be sponsored, it gets exponentially more difficult. You need to specifically find companies that do already sponsor that visa rather than kind of just find a diamond in the rough and then hope that they sponsor it for you. When I was applying for my jobs, I think I ended up applying to over like 70, 80 places in total. And by the end, I only had 3 offers. I ended up opting to be a technology and design consultant at Ernst & Young. And I spent about a year working there on very different projects. I was kind of hoping it would be a lot more computer science related when I started that placement, but it ended up being a lot more just focused on like the bigger aspect of project management, design and consulting, which was interesting, but not what I expected. So when I ended my placement and started my final year at King's, I'd already decided that computer science would not be the field that I would be working in. It would just be a means to get to the field that I wanted to establish myself in. So I opted to do human-computer interaction as my specialty for my final year. That's what I did my dissertation in. And that's what I ended up pursuing after I graduated as well.
So sticking to the whole idea of jobs and opportunities different countries provide in terms of staying back and looking for jobs, the post-study work visa is something new that came up, and students did consider that as an option where, or they felt that the UK was opening up and there were opportunities. The economics, the global sort of economics plays out, and perhaps the reality is that there aren't too many jobs for all sector, like students might be sort of considering. So what's the process of applying for post-study visa, or is it just a just any student who's graduating from uni is eligible to sort of stay back? For how long? What does it take to sort of get all the benefits that are promised?
Yeah.
And what exactly happens after you finish the post-study visa sort of period?
So the post-study work visa was kind of quite helpful when it was introduced in the regards that you could finally be self-employed after you graduated from university. So if you wanted to work as a freelancer and then start working on like a lot of different projects as a contractor, you could, whereas you can't do that on a student visa, regardless of whether it's tier 4 or the new one that's just come out. So the process of applying for a post-study work visa is you just graduate from your university. They kind of let you know that you're eligible for a post-study work visa, and they give you your information, your specific CAS number, and then you apply. It's kind of quite easy to do it. I think mine took about 2 days to get approved. So not a very difficult process at all. For undergrad and postgraduate students, it's about 2 years after you've graduated. You can only avail it once. So you can't do an undergrad and then do a post-study work visa and then do a master's and do another post-study work visa. But for PhD students, I think it's about 3 years, which is quite a bit helpful. During the post-study work visa, yeah, you can do whatever job you want while you're looking for work in your field. So you're not really restricted to the 3 months as you were originally. In terms of availing it to the best of your ability, I'd say the best thing to do would be to work part-time. And then, so, you know, at least you have a little bit of cash to play over with, and then keep looking for work. Because the unfortunate reality is that the UK is quite slow with the job market at the moment, so you will need that post-study work visa.
Thanks. Moving on to some of the cool stuff that you've been doing. And it seems that technology was always interesting, but not necessarily the hardcore coding and working as a full stack software engineer. What you chose was super exciting. HCI and what service design, some of these things that I'm kind of not very familiar with. It'll be fun
Yeah.
to demystify for our audience what does it take to study these subjects and what is the ground reality when it comes to applying what you learn at work, and what kind of work is actually what is the scope of applying what you learned in various industries in design or service design.
So I did think I was going to end up as a full stack engineer when I started my degree, but that changed very quickly while I was doing my placement. So the way how it all started and how my journey started was when I started my placement at EY, there was a 6-month project that I was seconded on, and most of the project revolved around redesigning the homelessness department of a local London council and how it operated. The issue was that that council was receiving a lot of homeless people on the day, and they didn't really know how to manage that kind of attention. They had a lot of different people who were working there, a lot of different frontline workers, a lot of different heads of services. So our project was 6 months of breaking down the service, firing and rehiring people, and then redefining how a new service would work and how it would be much more efficient than the previous service operated. So that was kind of my introduction to service design, which I thought was a lot more interesting than working as a full stack engineer or as a data scientist. So I decided that's what I wanted to pursue for my final specialty as well. A lot of design that I ended up pursuing, whether it be UI UX design, product design, or service design, it's all supposed to be human centered. So at the end of the day, my field of work boils down to thinking about your users, thinking about what they need rather than what you want, and then designing to make sure that all your users' needs are met, and then making sure that you're doing the best of your ability to manage stakeholders, manage users, and then address their problems.
So it does require kind of not just the technology piece, but understanding human behavior, social interaction, understanding of what is it to maybe even use a physical space, if that's what the mandate is for the work that you have. How do you
Yeah.
learn all this? Like, is there a process? Are there courses? And I know you did choose to go to Berlin and even did a master's degree. So tell us, walk us through your master's degree and the Berlin experience.
So my master's degree was quite radical, because it was supposed to be about expanding your practice, whatever practice you may have had at the moment when you joined the masters, and then kind of focusing on different aspects of service design and innovation design. My particular masters was taught by service designers from like a really big design company called IDEO that really focuses on human needs, human centered design, and also a lot of their workings are focused on really big countries like India and China. So it was quite interesting to learn all of it from the get go. I think one of the core tenets that we were taught was that a lot of service design and product design comes from like analogous comparisons. So you could be an artist who has an instinctive understanding of how to curate what a room would look like with different kinds of artworks and themes, but that also requires a very deep understanding of how humans use physical space and how they move around the room, and applying that learning to making sure that you're designing a space really well, whether it be for an exhibition or whether it be for a product that you're using. So I think a lot of it just boils down to, yeah, analogous learning. Um, I didn't really use much of my teachings from my degree because it ended up being a lot of practical stuff as well. We were doing a lot of different design projects throughout the masters, one of which was around 6 months. I think it was called Last Mile Money, and it involved working with a lot of people from India to sort of make sure that banks can get access to people who are living really, really, really far away from urban spaces, who wouldn't have access to ATMs and banking services. So that was, I think that's where I really came into my own and starting learning a lot of what my field is about.
So typically, it's an interesting intersection of understanding human needs and then
Mhm.
seeing not just how technology could work, but also how the service delivery could happen in a physical sense or even digitally. So there
Yeah.
could be a lot of data that's used and analyzed. So what do you think of use of AI in all of this? Is there a need to apply AI into a product like or service design project like yours?
I think I'm a very staunch believer in using AI to like wrap up admin tasks that I'm not in particular interest of doing, because it speeds up my workflow quite a bit. When it comes to understanding human needs, when it comes to like primary research, a lot of it has to be done by yourself because you'll be sitting in a room with other people talking to them and then figuring out how they're going about their lives, trying to just figure out what their problems are and what issues they're facing, whether it be using a product or whether it be some problem about which your product is their solution. AI is only helpful personally when I use it for wrapping up workflows, when I reuse it to like collate research that I've collected myself and then create like affinity maps, thematic diagrams. It does help in analyzing that particular data points that I've gathered, which is quite useful. And also just creating like a catalog of secondary research that I can just map out whenever I need to rather than doing it all manually. It's also quite useful in UI UX design, to be honest. It's been quite useful just making user workflows where I don't have to focus on every single pixel and make sure that is pixel perfect. Um, yeah, AI does really help in that regard.
Talking about the future of education and from a service design perspective, there is a problem that universities face when it comes to understanding student needs, and it's ever changing, and sort of the evolution of needs of students and other
Mhm.
stakeholders being in particular pretty important here. How does a university plan ahead and look at curriculum design, or even looking at how experiential learning that leads to skill building for the real world or a future
Yeah.
at work which is not yet fully defined. We'll cover all of
Yeah.
this in the section. So yeah, anything that you would like to add and share, that'll be awesome. What is the future of
Um,
education?
one of my issues with like universities, specifically in the UK, is the fact that they all seem to be made from like a certain mold. They're all very similar to each other, whether it comes to curriculum, whether it comes to like governance, and even when it comes to like a lot of different students that are working there. Um, I think one of the biggest issues universities face is that they all subscribe to gathering their data about student needs from one particular source, and then they look at it as sort of their own source of truth, rather than going through the effort of seeing what students at their university feel like. You can't really pander to an entire demographic that may be going to university in the north when you're yourself based in London. I think universities need to get specific about the needs for students who go to their own school. They need to be like slightly more different. You can't apply the same mold to every institution here. Which is something I've seen over the past 2 years as well. My undergrad experience at King's was very similar to my postgrad experience at Gold, which means I was equally unsatisfied with both of them, even when it came to like tutors or when it came to just professors as well. And they're supposed to be at very different ends of the spectrum. Like King's is supposed to be this ridiculously great university that's been at the forefront of everyone's minds for the past couple of years. And then Goldsmiths is an art and design university that's in South London. Culturally, they should be different, and their ways of teaching stuff should be different as well. But it's not, because they're both University of London and they both do their research in similar ways. They both decide to take actions in similar ways. So I think unless we see a very different approach that is university specific or institution specific, there won't be any change at the moment.
Thanks for sharing. Very often students and parents ask me, what's the difference between studying in the US and the UK? And the common answer is flexibility in the curriculum and the liberal education system that gives you some room to figure out things and decide your major even by the end of your second year of college. And then there's the other end of the spectrum, which have parents thinking, oh, why not go decide it? So there's that aspect. But then
Yeah.
if you look at the overall sort of 4-year degree and the sort of the melting pot and the idea of really living the residential college life experience in a suburban or even a rural college setting, that just
Yeah.
changes cultures you in some sense to life in the US more than the UK, where very often most of our students end up in London and have a very kind of a metropolitan mega city experience.
Yeah.
So, how, in retrospect, do you think your life would be different if you had chosen the US path? And you probably have interacted with many kids who've been there, done that in both these countries.
Yeah.
So there's no right answer. So it's just like, okay, turn back the clock and think of how your life would be if you had graduated from the US versus the UK.
So my brother's going to university in the US at the moment, and he is leading a very different lifestyle to what I did during my undergrad years. He's a lot more academically burdened. I was not, which I'm quite grateful for, even though he's also doing computer science. So that makes my life a little bit easier. But I think you can't. I've thought about this a lot over the last couple of years. I think primarily because of me changing what stream I specialize in and what my career would look like. You can't ask 17, 18-year-olds to focus on what they want for the rest of their lives. Like, that's just not feasible. You need to have like a little bit of flexibility in changing what you want. When I came into my third year, I didn't really want to continue doing computer science. I wanted to change my streams and do like industrial design or UI, UX or product, but I couldn't without dropping out. If I was in the US, that flexibility would have been a lot more appreciated. I could have changed my field after having explored what my field would have looked like. So I think I think my practice would be a lot more well-rounded if I was studying in the US. Mostly because I'd have, in retrospect, a lot of decisions that could have helped me back at that time. But yeah.
Yeah, thanks for an honest answer. I think, but it's still one size doesn't fit all. I'm sure there are students you feel have gained tremendously from studying in various universities in the UK too. But it's just two different systems, and like you said, there are pros and cons for both. Moving on to a final leg, there's this always feeling of a student living abroad. There's the money question, like how do you save money? And it's so expensive to live in mega cities like London. What are
Yeah.
the hacks and tips of sort of minimizing expenditure, or if there is anything like that in a city like London? Or yeah, what else would you say the students should be mindful of and not overspending, and figuring out maybe cheaper options, better options to sort of even daily needs and supplies and whatever leisure
There's
activities,
there's a lot of
entertainment.
different grocery stores here that do help cater to like all needs. I think like one of the basics, which are like don't eat out as much, they're kind of helpful, but with the rising prices of groceries in the UK, it's not very helpful at all. The UK is under like terrible inflation at the moment, so I don't really have any specific tips. I just have one. If you're working professionally in the UK and you're planning to go back to India, opt out of your pension. That will save you 300, 400 quid a month easily. Because your employer is legally obligated to put in at least 4% in your pension as well. So when you opt out of that pension, that money goes to your paycheck instead. So that's 10% of your paycheck right there that you're increasing in cost. So just keep that in mind. It took me like a couple weeks to realize that, and by then I was too late to get my money refunded. But when you go and opt out immediately, unless you're planning to stay here, in which case, like, yeah, keep going for your pension. It's fine.
So looking forward to following your journey in the future. I'm sure there'll be a time when you'll be back in India with so many interesting ideas and opportunities back home increasing. So what do you think India needs? Do they need professionals like you? Do you have a plan to be back? What's in store?
I do kind of have a plan to be back, maybe in like a couple of years. But I've seen India change quite a bit in the last couple of years. There's been a very interesting design movement that's been happening in and around Delhi. A lot of sustainability, a lot of upscaling when it comes to even textiles or just like reformative design. So that's kind of the field that I'm hoping to explore when I get back home. It would be quite interesting to see what the forefront is. Also, we have quite a lot of workforce to impact as well. So I think that'd be quite interesting to see. Yeah.
Awesome. Looking forward to your future success and hope to see you back in India, and we can do an in-person podcast then. Take care.
Thank you.